Welcome to another special edition of the Fast Lane. Trey Lau here with you. Time to preview Liberty versus UAB. And like all three games this week, it is, I guess, rematches from last season. Technically, UVA plays BC every year, but Liberty and UAB rematching. This time, it is in Lynchburg, Virginia. And to join me once again, like last year, Evan Dudley, AL.com. He covers the Blazers. Evan, so good to see you and hear from you once again. Thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Pleasure to be back.
Let's jump right into this. And obviously, questions at quarterback is the big thing. You know, the storyline going in this game for at least the Flames. Keaton Salter appears to have taken the starting role after the injury for Charlie Brewer. This guy is a very talented quarterback, was committed to Tennessee, obviously, or the Tennessee transfer, I should say. He's going to be a big challenge for the Blazers. Had the coaching staff talked about, there's not a lot of tape on Salter just last week against Southern Miss. What type of challenges that they're going to be facing?
These are things they've talked about, especially with an offense, run by Hugh Freeze, which is one of the more creative play callers in college football. But they've talked about the QB. They expect both to play at different times. But, Caden Salter is going to be the primary guy taking the snap, especially after what he was able to do last week against Southern Miss. Talking with some of the players too, they see a little bit of a Malik Willis type qualities in Caden and his creativity on the field. Maybe not as glamorous as Malik Willis has been, but he's a young player, so he's still got a few years to go. But they've talked about this guy. They know he's he's one of those guys that you have to contain, and if you allow him to get out, then he can make plays outside the box. So that's something they are concerned about, that they need to focus on. But also they're also expecting the other quarterback to also play as well. So I believe it was JB Jonathan Bennett. He'll be playing a little bit too. So but like I said, Caden Salter is the guy to kind of really focus on as far as who will be leading this offense.
And this is a UAB team that's been through some transition relatively recently. It was in June where Bill Clark had to step down due to health issues, and they promoted from within in Brian Vincent. And Bill Clark has done one of the best jobs in the country. You look at what happened to UAB with the shutting down the program and then coming back and so quickly being successful at a Conference USA level. This is definitely a team under transition, even though it's kind of an internal promotion. What is, Brian Vincent brought to this team that's kind of different than Bill Clark?
I think it might be just a little bit different of an attitude. Bill was so much more defense oriented. Brian Vincent is an offensive coordinator. He's got a little bit more spirited of an attitude than Bill. Bill may be a little bit more reserved at times, but these are two guys that had worked together for a very long time. They had known each other for almost, more than 20 years. So these are guys who are really close, and that's why Bill wanted, Vincent to have this opportunity to be the interim head coach and have an opportunity at the end of the year. And I think with Vincent, what it takes is, not only wins on the field, but it'll be his recruiting and his ownership of this program, which is something that he's really taken since taking over the position. He's really taken ownership of this program. He is the leader of it. He's made strides in recruiting, coming out of summer. We've seen what they were able to do on the field last week. So, it comes down to what he does on the field as well as off the field. But as far as the transition, there's not a lot of difference just because the entire coaching staff has been retained. So there's not a lot of difference in it besides Brian Vincent being the one calling the shots and leading the practices, giving the speeches. And it's something that Vincent has been prepared for. He was a head coach in high school, a very successful one before jumping to college. So, this is a guy who will be able to lead this team. And really, I think, he'll be successful. Just from talking with him and, knowing him these last few years and the kind of person he is, I think this is something that he's ready to really, take the reins of.
Well, we would say this is a future Conference USA matchup because Liberty's heading to CUSA, but it's not, because crazy college football, obviously UAB is leaving for the American, and that is, I believe, happening. This is going to be their last season in Conference USA. So it's definitely that brings a whole kind of new layer to things, is because this game is kind of really at the epicenter of, I want to say, group of five kind of realignment, where a lot of shakeup at the top caused a lot of shakeup at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, I think the American, we're going to be searching for a few extra teams. Obviously, UCF, Houston, Cincinnati moving was something that really spurred it more quickly. But I think it's something they were also searching for a few years. UAB had interest, but obviously it was something they weren't shopping themselves out until they reached a kind of a critical mass with their athletic department and building facilities and showing commitment. Putting money where their mouth is, which is something they've been able to do these past few years as an entire athletic department. So, but it is interesting, with Liberty, leaving the independent to going into a conference, which a lot of schools are continuing to do that, except for Notre Dame. That's going to be probably the last holdout, if anybody. Maybe Army, although Army was a member of Conference USA about 20 years ago. So, it's kind of really interesting, but also you see Liberty, they've been able to have success these last few years. UAB has as well. So I think it's just interesting that you'll have a team that will be going into the Conference USA that can compete right away. And you have a team going into the American that should be able to compete right away on that level. And they're coming together to meet, right before all this happens. So it's a really interesting, game just from that aspect.
Let's move to the other side of the ball and we'll revisit the offense at the end. But Dylan Hopkins, obviously a 2,000-yard passer last season. He comes in starting role this year. What skill set does he bring, and what are the expectations from him? Obviously, playing Alabama A&M was a big win, or a comfortable win against an FCS opponent. What kind of skill set does he bring?
Well, Dylan, he's very much a warrior. He'll get in there, he'll make the extra play, he'll put his shoulder down on a run if he has to. So he's the leader. He's a guy who's ready to lead a team. I believe last year in Marshall, I went to that game, and afterwards, his hands were bloodied up, just from running the ball, getting hit a bunch of times. But he was. He was in high spirits because he led his team to a win. So, that's the first thing you're going to see with Dylan Hopkins. He is a leader. He knows how to lead a team. The second point would be his physical attributes. He's got a great arm, and needs to work on accuracy a little bit. But I think that's something they've been able to do over the offseason. He had a surgery on his non-throwing shoulder, so he wasn't able to really throw until maybe the end of spring a little bit, going into the summertime. But that's something he's worked on with all these new receivers. They've got probably the deepest receiver room they've had since coming back in 2017. So that's really helped him out. And he's fleet of foot at times as well. It's a real deceptive kind of runner. You might not see it at the beginning, but that's something that players on the field would tell you, that he's got a lot more speed than what you see on film. So it's something that you have to watch out for, because he can get out, and they'll have design runs as well. UAB does like to run their QBs. That's something they've always kind of done these past few years. Vincent might not do as much this year, trying to keep his QBs healthy, but he does have another guy, Jacob Zeno, former Baylor transfer, waiting in the wings, who can run the offense, who will play some too. But it's Dylan's team. He's got the arm, he's got the legs, and he's got the leadership. So, it's kind of a guy that you want to be leading your team.
Talk about, 100-yard rusher last week and Jerome Bowden Jr. You talked about these offensive weapons, and this is going to face a defense that did give up some rushing yards last week to Frank Gore Jr. and Southern Miss when they switched to the Wildcat, did give them some trouble. How important will this running game be, and do you expect Jerome Brown to have another good game?
Yeah, he should have another good game. Now, that being said, Dwayne McBride is
Jermaine Brown. Sorry, I said Jerome.
Yeah. Dwayne McBride is their feature back, but he was out last week. He just had a bout with some acid reflux. Just was sick at the time, so it was just one of those random things that happen. So he's perfectly healthy. He practiced this week, so he should be able to go along with Trey Shropshire, their top receiver, as well as their left tackle Kadeem Telford, Outland Trophy nominee. He was out last week as well, but all three of those guys are going to be back this week, which helps this offense. But Dwayne McBride is the real bell cow for this offense. He can get the hard yards. He's got the speed that he can break loose for very long very long runs as well. So, this is a guy they probably need to focus more. But although Jermaine Brown is a guy that can, he can run between the tackles, he can do everything Dwayne Brett can do, but he's also he's fluid in the passing game as well. He can get the ball in space and he can do things with that. So that's something you also got to watch with Jermaine Brown. So they've got a deep running back room. I think Dwayne McBride will be the guy that'll be leading this rushing attack this week. But look for Jermaine Brown to have plenty of opportunities to showcase his skills as well.
Now flipping to the other side, we talked a little bit about the challenge that Salter brings, but this is a very talented receiving core. Douglas had 2 touchdowns last week in a game against Southern Miss, and they have a deep running back core. What type of challenges, is UAB facing this week, and how can their defense kind of try to slow down a Hugh Freeze well-coached offense?
Well, the thing with UAB that is probably makes this more interesting is that UAB has a really good defense. Last year when they met, they had probably had 3 or 4, maybe 5 to 6 starters out at that point when Liberty came to town last year. They went through a lot of growing pains last year just from an injury standpoint. A lot of younger guys had to start stepping up. But with this year, a lot of experience returns. Maybe the one question mark they had was their defensive line, but they were able to kind of restock that with a bunch of a trio of junior college guys who were big and nasty. One of them was a former Syracuse transfer as well, who went to a year Mississippi JUCO for signing with UAB. So this is a defense that's seen the battles. They're really good tacklers. They're fast. This is probably one of the fastest defenses we've seen at UAB in years. So I think it's just it really comes down to them really containing Salter, really containing the quarterback position. I think as far as running the ball, they'll be able to contain a pretty good run game. They've always kind of been really good at that. And looking at the linebackers they have behind those defensive linemen, it's hard to see any team running. They held Alabama A&M to less than 100 yards last week. They can never get any kind of consistency going on that side. But I mean, you got to look at Salter. If he was able to get out, in those lanes and create some plays with his feet on his own, that's where it'll start affecting the UAB defense more, to where they're going to be looking more to him running and maybe not paying as much attention to a running back in space or a run up the middle, whereas their eyes might be glued to the quarterback more times. So that's kind of the issue with the UAB defense, is if Salter gets out and starts making plays, then that'll allow the rest of that offense to kind of find itself and find some consistency against a UAB defense that's might be one of the best it's had since they've come back.
Looking at the game last year, it was 3-3 going into halftime, and then the Malik Willis show happened. He had 3 touchdowns, 2 on the ground, 1 through the air in that third quarter, and really broke the game open. What is something that the coaching staff has talked about that they don't want to repeat of last year, where it was a close game in the halftime, and then the Liberty offense just took over in that second half?
And and like I said, I think a lot of it was the injuries they had at that point. A lot of young guys, obviously not making excuses for a UAB program. They lost fair and square. I mean, Malik Willis did lock them up in the second half. I think my sidebar story was about Malik Willis. It wasn't really anything about UAB did. It was what Malik Willis did to UAB. Just in what he was able to do. It was pretty amazing. But, I think UAB being able to play a guy like that who can create as much as he can, only helps them. It helps the guys who returned as far as their experience, them not maybe getting locked on a QB at all times, but, keeping their eyes open, for the entire field to see what he's seeing as well. So I think it's something that they that's in the back of their minds, but they also know that they can take care of this from learning what they did last year. And Caden Salter, like I believe it was Kyle Harrell, one of their outside linebackers, he said that Salter has some Willis-like capabilities. So that is something they really need to watch, because this is a guy who can create. Maybe not on the level of Malik Willis when he was leading the program, but Salter's a younger guy, so he's got plenty of time to kind of, become that kind of guy like Malik Willis, who can create plays and, really be just a very explosive offensive player.
Now let's look at the game here. UAB actually the favorite for the Liberty Flames home opener, 6.5 point favorite, over under 50. Any thoughts on how this game's gonna shake out?
It'll be really tough to see just because of the Liberty offense having to change so much with a new quarterback. Maybe not change so much, but just seeing something new. Charlie Brewer came in. He was the heir apparent to Malik Willis. He won the job. He was going to be the guy, and then he's out after the first series. I mean, he played a few more plays after the first series, but he's pretty much out there with with the thumb injury. You hate it for a guy like that who had was going into kind of his final season trying to cap his career off. But with these guys, I think that's going to be what the interesting part of this game is just bringing in these new quarterbacks who you really don't have a lot of film on besides the last week, which that's really more of a second half, overtime in which, you can't really learn a whole lot probably from overtime now because you're right there at the goal line after, the first two overtime sessions. So it'll be interesting to see from the offensive point. I think that'll be the most interesting point. If UAB can kind of hold this offense early, then I think, the UAB's offense will be able to run the ball well. Will be able to, kind of really open up their passing game with Dwayne McBride back running the ball. He'll be able to, get first downs, move the chains really well for them. But I think what we'll see from the Liberty offense is what will tell this game. If they're able to be consistent and make plays, then it'll be a close game. But if not, I think UAB will be able to, cover in the end.
Well, we're set up for a hot matchup between the Blazers and the Flames. I kept that in the pocket for a little bit. Evan, how can Flames fans learn more about the Blazers and connect with you?
Well, I am on Twitter at Dudley Do-Rot AL, Rot as in WRITE. A little pun. I'm Rotter. We love puns. Puns are great. You can also check al.com/UAB. That'll be all the UAB stuff coming out the next couple of days. Heading up I head up to Lynchburg. Gonna take the drive myself. I figured it'd be a lovely drive up into the Virginia hills. Might even have to ride over to Monticello on Sunday and check that out. Haven't been there in about 20 years.
Well, sounds like fun. You drive safe. Thanks so much for listening to a special edition of the Fast Lane. Thank you so much, Evan, for joining us. As always, you can connect with me at Fastlane, Ed Lane at Trey Lyle VT, personally, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Thank you so much for listening to this special edition of the Fast Lane.